I never expected to fall in love with the man I was hired to care for. As a dedicated nurse at Westbridge Private Hospital, I've always prided myself on my professionalism, but everything changed when I was assigned to the penthouse suite of tech billionaire Lucas Montgomery. His powerful body lay still, trapped in a coma after what everyone called a tragic accident. I spoke to him daily, read his favorite books, and noticed how his brain activity spiked whenever I entered the room. While others had given up hope, I believed he could hear me. The night his fingers suddenly gripped mine changed everything. When his eyes finally opened and he whispered that single word, danger, I knew I had awakened something beyond just a patient. I discovered experimental drugs in his IV that weren't prescribed, medical records with missing pages, hidden cameras monitoring his room. The more I investigated, the clearer it became. Someone wanted Lucas Montgomery to stay in that coma permanently. Against every professional boundary I swore to uphold, I kept his awakening secret. Together, we pieced together the conspiracy that almost killed him, all while fighting against an unthinkable attraction that grew stronger each day. Now I'm caught between protecting the man I've fallen dangerously in love with and exposing the powerful enemies who want us both silenced. His life depends on my care, but my heart depends on his survival. Buckle up, get ready, and subscribe for a special surprise tomorrow. Emma Reeves stood outside the penthouse suite of Westbridge Private Hospital, smoothing her pristine uniform one last time before entering. Her heartbeat quickened as she scanned her ID badge. This assignment was unlike any in her nursing career. Private care for tech billionaire Lucas Montgomery, who had been comatose for 3 months following a car accident that had dominated headlines across the country. The pneumatic doors hissed open, revealing a hospital room that looked more like a luxury apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city. Designer furniture replaced standard hospital chairs, and sophisticated medical equipment had been integrated seamlessly into the upscale decor. In the center of it all lay Lucas Montgomery. Despite the newspaper photos Emma had seen of the charismatic CEO at product launches and charity galas, she was unprepared for how vulnerable he appeared. His athletic frame seemed diminished against the white sheets, his once animated face now still, with a shadow of stubble carefully maintained by previous caretakers. Nurse Reeves. The sharp voice belonged to hospital director Dr. Harrison, who appeared from an adjoining room. His thin smile didn't reach his eyes. I trust you've reviewed Mr. Montgomery's file thoroughly. Yes, doctor. I've memorized his medication schedule, physiotherapy requirements, and noted all previous responses to treatment, Emma replied, maintaining eye contact despite his intimidating demeanor. Dr. Harrison lowered his voice. Let me be clear about something. This case has exceptional visibility. The board of Montgomery Technologies checks in daily, and they're paying this hospital an extraordinary sum for their CEO's care. Emma nodded. I understand the importance. What you need to understand, he interrupted, is that attachment to hopeless cases is unprofessional. Previous nurses became emotionally invested. That won't happen with you. Emma felt her cheeks flush but kept her expression neutral. I assure you, Doctor Harrison, I'm here to provide the highest standard of medical care. Nothing more. See that you do, checked his watch. Mr. Montgomery's interim CEO will be here shortly to meet you. Victor Mercer has final approval on all staff assignments. 20 minutes later, Emma was adjusting Lucas's IV when the door opened again. The man who entered carried himself with the confidence of someone accustomed to control. His tailored suit and perfectly knotted tie contrasted sharply with the cold calculation in his eyes as he assessed Emma. Victor Mercer, he said, extending a manicured hand, CFO and acting CEO of Montgomery Technologies. Emma Reeves. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Mercer. Victor didn't return the pleasantry. Instead, his gaze traveled to Lucas. Has there been any change in his condition? No significant changes in the past 24 hours, Emma replied. His vitals remain stable. Victor's attention snapped back to her. Your file says you've been at Westbridge for 4 years, yet this is your first high-profile assignment. Why were you selected? The question felt like an accusation. I specialized in neuroscience during my training and have the highest patient satisfaction rating in the trauma recovery unit. Patient satisfaction. Victor's smile was thin. Not particularly relevant in this case, is it? Emma found her voice growing firmer. On the contrary, Mr. Mercer. Studies show comatose patients often report hearing conversations around them after recovery. My approach includes speaking to Mr. Montgomery regularly, maintaining dignity in his care, and creating a positive environment that may aid recovery. Victor studied her for a long moment. Just remember, Nurse Reeves, many people are invested in Lucas's care. I'll be monitoring your reports personally. Who has access to this room? Only authorized medical personnel. Myself, Dr. Harrison, the neurologist, Dr. Chen, and nurse manager, Patricia. And yourself, of course. Keep it that way, Victor instructed, especially regarding visitors. His sister Olivia is not to be admitted under any circumstances. She's emotionally unstable, and her presence would be detrimental. Once Victor left, Emma began her care routine, speaking softly to Lucas as she checked his vitals. Good morning, Mr. Montgomery. I'm Emma, your new nurse. It's April 15th, and the cherry blossoms are blooming outside your window. Later that day, Emma met Dr. Sophia Chen, the neurologist assigned to Lucas's case. Unlike Dr. Harrison's clinical detachment doctor, Chen's concern seemed genuine. His brain scans show activity, Dr. Chen noted, but we can't determine consciousness. Keep talking to him, though. Your predecessors didn't take that part seriously. Emma also encountered Marcus, the night security guard who patrolled the executive floor. With kind eyes that contrasted with his imposing build, he offered her a coffee during her break. The Montgomery suite is my special assignment, he explained. Anything unusual, you call me first, not hospital security. That evening, as Emma organized Lucas's medical file, she noticed something odd. Pages appeared to be missing from February, and medication logs showed inconsistencies. Some entries were initialed by nurses she couldn't identify. When nurse manager Patricia came to check on her, Emma casually inquired about the discrepancies. Filing errors, Patricia dismissed with a wave of her hand. This case has had so many specialists in and out, and between us, she lowered her voice, the previous nurses didn't last long. Too much pressure from upstairs. As her first shift ended, Emma looked back at Lucas. Something about the case felt wrong, beyond the tragedy of a vital man struck down in his prime. She made a silent promise to the still figure in the bed. I'll be back tomorrow, Mr. Montgomery, and I'll be paying very close attention to everything that happens here. A week into her new assignment, Emma had established a routine with her unusual patient. Each morning, she opened the curtains to let sunlight stream into the penthouse suite, describing the weather and the view to Lucas as she checked his vitals and administered his medications. The city looks different from up here, Mr. Montgomery, she said, while adjusting his position to prevent bed sores. I bet you chose this hospital because you could see your company headquarters from the window. The Montgomery Technologies tower is gleaming this morning. Emma had begun bringing books during her shifts. Today, she read from a biography she'd found on Lucas's nightstand. According to the book, he'd built his fortune designing medical diagnostic software before expanding into consumer technology. His latest project before the accident had been a revolutionary medical AI system. While reading, Emma glanced at the brain activity monitor and noticed something extraordinary. Spikes in his theta waves coinciding with her voice. Setting the book down, she moved closer. "Can you hear me, Mr. Montgomery?" she asked. The monitor showed another spike. Emma pressed the call button for Dr. Chen, who arrived minutes later. "It happens consistently when I speak to him," Emma explained, demonstrating the phenomenon. Dr. Chen studied the readings with intensity. "This pattern suggests he might be processing external stimuli, particularly your voice. It's not definitive proof of consciousness, but it's significant." "Should we notify Mr. Mercer?" Emma asked. Dr. Chen hesitated. "Let's monitor it for a few more days before creating false hope. Continue what you're doing. It seems to be having an effect." After Dr. Chen left, Emma leaned closer to Lucas. "I think you're in there, fighting to come back. I'm going to help you." That afternoon, while adjusting a flower arrangement sent by Montgomery Technologies board, Emma noticed something unusual in the base of a lamp. A tiny camera lens, partially concealed, but reflecting light at a certain angle. Her pulse quickened as she continued her duties without reacting. During her break, she researched the lamp model on her phone, confirming it wasn't standard hospital equipment. Someone was watching Lucas and her. Emma waited until her shift ended, when housekeeping briefly emptied the room. Under the pretext of cleaning up a small water spill, she accidentally knocked over the lamp, deftly removing the surveillance device before housekeeping returned. The next day, Emma brought her personal tablet to work. During quiet moments between care duties, she researched Lucas Montgomery's accident. Official reports described a tragic car crash on a rainy night. His autonomous vehicle had malfunctioned, sending him off a cliff road. He'd barely survived, sustaining the traumatic brain injury that left him comatose. But several tech blogs questioned the narrative. Montgomery's vehicles had perfect safety records, and he'd been on the verge of announcing a major breakthrough with his medical AI project, one that promised to revolutionize disease diagnosis and significantly reduce pharmaceutical dependency for certain conditions. Emma was cross-referencing dates in a technology journal when the door opened. Victor Mercer entered, eyes narrowing when he saw her with the tablet. "Catching up on social media during your shift, Nurse Reeves?" His voice carried a threatening undertone. Emma kept her expression neutral. "Just reviewing Mr. Montgomery's medical history. His previous accomplishments in medical technology are quite relevant to understanding his case." Victor approached Lucas's bedside table, his gaze falling on the personal items Emma had organized: a watch, cufflinks, and a small notebook found in the belongings that had accompanied him to the hospital. "Why are these here?" Victor demanded, picking up the notebook. "Familiar objects can sometimes stimulate cognitive response in comatose patients," Emma replied, recalling her neuroscience training. "His personal effects were in storage. I thought they might help." Victor's jaw tightened. "You're overstepping, Nurse Reeves. Your job is medical care, not psychological therapy." He pocketed the notebook. "This contains proprietary company information. I'll be taking it back to headquarters." After he left, Emma continued her gentle one-sided conversations with Lucas. She'd noticed the spikes in brain activity were becoming more frequent, particularly when she asked direct questions. Later that week, while updating Lucas's charts, Emma discovered more inconsistencies. The medication log showed gaps, and when she compared the current prescriptions with those from his first weeks at Westbridge, she found subtle changes without documented approval from Dr. Chen. Emma photographed the discrepancies with her phone before carefully replacing the files. She was beginning to feel that something wasn't right about Lucas Montgomery's care, or perhaps about his accident. During her evening routine, Emma sat beside Lucas's bed, speaking softly as she adjusted his blankets. "I wish you could tell me what happened to you," she said. "The official story doesn't add up. Your company seems different now, with Victor in charge. And someone was watching you through a hidden camera. I don't think your accident was an accident at all." As Emma reached to check his pulse, something impossible happened. Lucas Montgomery's fingers twitched against the sheet. Then, slowly but deliberately, his hand moved, reaching for hers. Emma froze, watching in astonishment as his fingers weakly closed around her wrist. His eyelids fluttered, then opened fully for the first time since she'd met him. Blue eyes, disoriented but unmistakably conscious, locked onto hers. His lips parted dry from months of disuse. In a hoarse whisper that sent chills down Emma's spine, Lucas Montgomery spoke a single word before his eyes closed again. "Danger." Emma stared at Lucas's now motionless form, her heart pounding. After 3 months in a coma, he had awakened, if only for seconds, and his first word had been danger. She checked his vitals, finding his heart rate slightly elevated but otherwise stable. His brain activity monitor showed the most complex patterns she'd seen yet. She needed to report this immediately, but something stopped her. The hidden camera, the inconsistent medical records, Victor Mercer's controlling behavior. Lucas's warning echoed in her mind. If he was in danger, alerting the wrong person could make things worse. Emma made a decision. She recorded the elevated vital signs in the chart, but omitted any mention of consciousness or speech. Then she texted Dr. Chen. "Need to speak privately. Urgent. Patient-related." The next morning, Emma met Dr. Chen in the hospital cafeteria. "He woke up," Emma whispered, leaning across the table. "Just for a moment, but he was conscious. He spoke." Dr. Chen's eyes widened. "That's extraordinary. What did he say?" "Danger." Just that one word. Emma described the hand movement and eye contact. "I didn't document it because something feels wrong about this whole situation." Dr. Chen glanced around before responding. "I've had concerns too. The medication changes coming from administration instead of neurology. The restrictions on visitors, even family." "So you believe me?" Emma asked. "I do, and I agree we should proceed cautiously." Dr. Chen tapped her coffee cup thoughtfully. "We'll modify his official treatment plan to include therapies that might aid consciousness, but we won't report any breakthroughs yet. I'll authorize you to administer reduced sedation. Let's see if he wakes again, preferably when you're alone with him." Later that day, Emma was checking Lucas's IV when she noticed something troubling. Among the standard medications was a small bag labeled with a code rather than a drug name. She took a photo with her phone before carefully examining the solution. The color had a slightly different tint than documented in his chart. Emma remembered a pharmaceutical trial from her training days with a similar coding system. She searched the drug database on her hospital tablet and found it, an experimental compound designed to maintain specific types of coma states while allowing basic physiological function. It was still in clinical trials, not approved for general use. She was removing the mysterious IV bag when nurse manager Patricia entered. "What are you doing?" Patricia asked sharply. Emma maintained her composure. "Just following Dr. Chen's new orders. Mr. Montgomery's medication schedule has been adjusted. Patricia's eyes narrowed. Dr. Harrison needs to approve all changes to this patient's regimen. Dr. Chen is the neurologist of record, Emma countered. Her orders take precedence for neurological care. After a tense standoff, Patricia left, presumably to report the incident. Emma quickly completed the medication change, replacing the experimental drug with standard saline. She had just finished when her phone chimed with a text from Marcus, the security guard. "Watch your bag." Budget cuts announced. Your department on list. The next day, a hospital-wide email confirmed it. Staffing reductions were coming, with long-term care positions, including Lucas's private nurse assignment, under review. The timing seemed suspicious. That evening, Emma returned to her apartment to find the door slightly ajar. Heart racing, she called building security before entering cautiously. Inside, everything appeared normal at first glance, but closer inspection revealed subtle disturbances. Her laptop moved, papers on her desk rearranged, a drawer not fully closed. In her home office, the folder where she'd kept her printouts about Lucas's accident was missing. Someone had searched her apartment with professional precision, taking only what related to Lucas Montgomery. Emma could no longer deny it. She had stumbled into something dangerous. The question was whether to retreat or push forward. She chose to fight. Her night shift began at 11. As usual, Emma spoke to Lucas while performing her care duties, but now she included strategic information, mentioning she had backup copies of everything, that others knew what she'd discovered. Subtle implications that would worry anyone monitoring. At 2 a.m., during the quietest hospital hours, Emma was adjusting Lucas's blankets when his eyelids fluttered. This time, his awakening was more pronounced. His eyes opened fully, immediately focusing on her face with panicked intensity. "You're safe," Emma whispered, taking his hand. "I'm Emma, your nurse. You're in Westbridge Hospital. You've been in a coma for 3 months. Do you understand?" Lucas gave a slight nod, his eyes never leaving hers. "They're listening?" he mouthed silently. Emma shook her head. "Not anymore, but we need to be careful." Lucas struggled to speak, his voice a harsh whisper after months of disuse. "Victor, Jenkins, they did this. My car, sabotage." Emma helped him sip water through a straw. "The accident wasn't an accident?" "A eye project. Found they were selling patient data. Confronted them. Next day, brake lines cut." Each sentence seemed to drain his energy, but determination burned in his eyes. "They can't know I'm awake." "The hospital administration is involved somehow," Emma told him. "They've been giving you experimental drugs to keep you unconscious." Fear flashed across Lucas's face, followed by steely resolve. "Trust no one. If Victor knows I'm conscious, he'll finish the job." "What can I do?" Emma asked. "Pretend. Keep charting coma. Need time to recover. Need evidence." Lucas's hand gripped hers with surprising strength. "Why are you helping me?" Emma met his gaze. "Because something's wrong here, and no one else is looking for the truth." For a moment, something beyond gratitude passed between them, a connection that neither acknowledged but both felt. "They'll transfer me soon," Lucas whispered, "once they realize medication changed." "I won't let that happen," Emma promised. As dawn approached, Lucas's energy waned. Before slipping back into sleep, natural sleep, not coma, he squeezed Emma's hand once more. "Thank you," he whispered, "for believing me when I couldn't speak. Ha mor en sonnet." Over the next week, Emma and Lucas developed a careful routine. During day shifts when hospital staff frequently entered the room, Lucas maintained the appearance of a comatose patient, eyes closed, body still, monitors displaying the expected readings thanks to Dr. Chen's discreet adjustments. But during Emma's night shifts, when visitors were minimal, Lucas's real recovery began. Emma brought supplies from the physical therapy department: hand grips, light weights, resistance bands, smuggling them in her oversized nursing bag and removing all evidence before morning rounds. "You need to build your strength back," she explained on the third night, helping Lucas sit up in bed for the first time. 3 months of muscle atrophy won't reverse itself. Lucas grimaced as he pushed himself upright, arms trembling with effort. "Feels like I'm lifting a truck." "That's just your ego weighing you down," Emma teased, surprising herself with the easy banter that had developed between them. Tech billionaires are notoriously dense. A smile broke across Lucas's face, a genuine one that transformed his features from handsome to breathtaking. Emma felt an unexpected flutter in her chest and quickly looked away, adjusting his pillows with professional efficiency. "Tell me more about Victor's behavior since the accident," Lucas said, working his fingers around a stress ball Emma had provided. Emma described Victor's controlling visits, his questions about security access, and his insistence on approving all medical decisions. "He's also been making company announcements. Last week, he shelved your medical AI project, claiming it was too experimental to pursue without your guidance." Anger flashed in Lucas's eyes. That project would have made diagnostic medicine accessible to millions who can't afford specialists. We were weeks away from clinical trials. He squeezed the stress ball until his knuckles whitened. "What about Lawrence Jenkins?" Board member, always wears bow ties. "He's visited twice. They spoke about restructuring and moving assets offshore." "Offshore," Lucas repeated, voice hardening. "They're dismantling everything I built." Later that night, Emma helped Lucas stand for the first time. She positioned herself in front of him, arms ready to catch him if his legs gave way. His hospital gown had been replaced with a t-shirt and sweatpants Emma had purchased, smuggled in to preserve his dignity during these recovery sessions. "I've got you," she assured him as he gripped her shoulders, taking his first tentative step. Lucas swayed, muscles trembling with exertion. Emma's hands instinctively went to his waist to steady him, feeling the warmth of his body through the thin cotton shirt. They were suddenly very close, his face inches from hers, blue eyes intense with something beyond concentration. "You're doing great," Emma murmured, acutely aware of his hands on her shoulders, her palms against his sides. Lucas took another step, bringing him even closer. "Thanks to you." The moment stretched between them, charged with unspoken awareness. Then Lucas's legs buckled slightly, breaking the spell as Emma helped him back to bed. "Tomorrow we try for 2 steps," she said briskly, reverting to her nurse persona despite the color in her cheeks. The next day, Emma arrived with a small package hidden in her scrubs pocket. After checking that no one was monitoring the room, she presented Lucas with a secure tablet, specially configured to leave no digital footprint. "It's not connected to the hospital network," she explained. "You can access your accounts without alerting IT security." Lucas examined the device with appreciation. "Where did you get this?" "My brother works in cybersecurity." He asked fewer questions than he should have. Emma glanced at the door. "Hide it when you're not using it. I'll create a diversion if anyone comes unexpectedly." As Lucas began accessing his personal accounts, Emma found herself studying his profile, the determined set of his jaw, the intelligence in his eyes, the way his brow furrowed in concentration. She caught herself and turned away, disturbed by the growing frequency of these moments of awareness. This was her patient, a man in danger, a professional relationship under extraordinary circumstances. Nothing more. Yet that night, when Lucas successfully walked the length of the room with only minimal support, the triumph in his eyes as he turned to her broke through her carefully maintained boundaries. Without thinking, Emma stepped forward and hugged him, a spontaneous celebration of his progress. Lucas stiffened in surprise, then his arms encircled her, strong despite weeks of therapy. For a brief moment, they held each other, the embrace conveying what neither had voiced: gratitude, trust, and something deeper taking root between them. When they pulled apart, neither spoke immediately. Lucas raised his hand to her face, fingers barely brushing her cheek. "Emma," he said softly, her name carrying questions he didn't ask aloud. She should step back, re-establish professional distance. Instead, Emma found herself leaning closer as Lucas bent toward her. Their lips met in a kiss that began tentatively, but quickly deepened, conveying months of unspoken emotions: his isolation and gratitude, her concern and growing feelings. When they finally separated, reality crashed back. Emma stepped away, hands shaking slightly. "I shouldn't have done that," she whispered. "You're my patient." "I'm a man whose life you saved," Lucas countered, still holding her gaze, "who hasn't felt human connection in months, who hasn't felt alive until you." Emma closed her eyes briefly. "This complicates everything." "Everything was already complicated the moment someone tried to kill me," Lucas said. His expression softened. "But I'm not sorry it happened." Neither was Emma, though she couldn't bring herself to admit it aloud. Instead, she helped him back to bed, their movements now charged with new awareness of each other. "Get some rest," she said, professional voice back in place though her heart raced. "We have a lot of work to do if we're going to expose Victor and Jenkins before they realize you're awake." "I need to find my sister," Lucas said the following night, his fingers moving deftly across the tablet screen. "Olivia is the only family member I trust completely, and Victor has banned her from visiting." Emma leaned against the window, keeping watch for unexpected visitors. "He told me she was emotionally unstable and would be detrimental to your recovery." Lucas laughed without humor. "Olivia is a corporate attorney with nerves of steel. The only instability Victor fears is her ability to recognize what he's doing to my company." He looked up from the tablet. "I need your help to contact her, away from the hospital." The next morning, Emma called in a favor from Marcus, the security guard. During his shift, he slipped her Olivia Montgomery's business card, obtained through his network of hospital contacts. "Be careful," Marcus warned. "Dr. Harrison was asking about your night shifts, whether anything unusual happens." After her shift, Emma drove to a coffee shop 15 miles from the hospital and called the number on the card from a payphone. "This is Olivia Montgomery," answered a crisp, professional voice. "My name is Emma Reeves. I'm your brother's nurse at Westbridge Hospital." There was a pause. "How did you get this number?" "Hospital staff are prohibited from contacting me." "I know. That's part of why I'm calling." Emma took a deep breath. "I need to meet with you. It's about Lucas. He's improving." Another longer pause. "Grand Hill Park, South Entrance, tomorrow, 3 p.m., come alone." The following afternoon, Emma sat nervously on a bench near the park entrance. A slender woman in a tailored suit approached, her features a feminine echo of Lucas's. "Ms. Reeves?" Olivia's sharp gaze assessed Emma thoroughly. "Let's walk." Once they were safely away from other park visitors, Emma explained everything: Lucas's awakening, his accusation against Victor and Jenkins, and the mysterious medications. Olivia listened without interruption, her expression hardening. From her briefcase, she produced a file folder. I've been investigating the accident since it happened. The police report was suspiciously brief. The autonomous driving system in Lucas's car had triple redundancies. It couldn't just fail. She handed Emma several documents. 2 days before the accident, Lucas called me saying he discovered something disturbing in the medical AI project. Patient data was being harvested and sold to pharmaceutical companies without consent. That's what he told me, Emma confirmed. He confronted Victor and Jenkins about it. Olivia nodded grimly. The next morning, he had an emergency board meeting scheduled. He never made it. She pulled out another document. These are financial records showing unusual offshore transfers from accounts linked to Victor and Jenkins, starting the day after Lucas's accident. Emma tucked the documents into her bag. Lucas needs these. He's gathering evidence through the tablet I smuggled in. Olivia's composed demeanor cracked slightly, revealing the worried sister beneath the attorney. How is he, really? Getting stronger every day. He can walk short distances now, though it exhausts him. Emma hesitated before adding, he misses you. Something softened in Olivia's eyes. Tell him I'm fighting for him, and that I've put contingency plans in place. Legal measures that will activate if anything happens to either of us. That night, Emma showed Lucas the documents from his sister. While he reviewed them, she noticed his hands trembling slightly. Are you okay? She asked, taking his wrist to check his pulse. Just tired, he said, but his face had gone pale. Emma recognized the signs immediately. A post-traumatic episode beginning. Lucas, look at me. Focus on my voice. His breathing had quickened, eyes darting to the window. I keep seeing the car go over the edge, the water rushing in, knowing they'd done this to me. Emma sat beside him on the bed, taking his face in her hands. You're safe now. You survived, and we're going to make them pay for what they did. Lucas's eyes locked onto hers, finding anchor there. Slowly, his breathing steadied. I haven't told you everything about that night. I remember fragments, the brakes failing, the steering locking. But there's something else. His voice dropped. Someone was waiting at the bottom of the ravine. I was conscious briefly after the crash. I saw a figure approaching before I blacked out. A chill ran down Emma's spine. You think they came to make sure you were dead? I think they were surprised I wasn't. His hands gripped hers, which means whoever it was could recognize me now, could know I survived. The implications were terrifying. Someone within the hospital might have been the very person sent to finish the job 3 months ago. Their conversation was interrupted by a soft knock, Dr. Chen's signal. Emma quickly helped Lucas resume his comatose position before admitting the neurologist. Dr. Chen closed the door behind her, expression grave. I found something concerning, a new medication order for Lucas, scheduled to begin tomorrow. It wasn't authorized by me. She handed Emma the chart. This compound would cause permanent cognitive impairment if administered. Emma felt the blood drain from her face. Who ordered it? The signature is Dr. Harrison's, but the order originated with the hospital board. Specifically, a recent donation came with stipulations about Lucas's care. Let me guess, Lucas said, abandoning his pretense of unconsciousness. Montgomery Technologies made the donation. Dr. Chen startled at hearing her patient speak, despite knowing he had awakened. Yes, through Victor Mercer, personally. Emma and Lucas exchanged looks of alarm. Their timeline had just accelerated dramatically. They're planning to ensure I never wake up, Lucas said grimly. Even if they have to transfer me, they need to guarantee I can't expose what they've done. After Dr. Chen left, promising to accidentally misplace the medication order for at least 24 hours, Lucas turned to the secure tablet with renewed urgency. "I need access to the company servers," he explained, fingers flying across the screen. "If Victor and Jenkins are selling patient data from my AI project, there will be digital footprints." Emma watched as he navigated through layers of security. "Won't they detect your access?" "Not if I use my emergency protocols. After a previous hacking attempt, I created a shadow admin account that doesn't generate the usual login alerts." His face was illuminated by the screen's glow, highlighting the determination in his eyes. "They think I'm brain damaged or dead. They wouldn't have bothered changing these deep security measures." For hours, Lucas combed through corporate servers while Emma maintained watch. Occasionally, she helped him stand and stretch to prevent muscle cramps, their bodies moving in the synchrony they'd developed during his physical therapy sessions. "Got it," Lucas finally said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "The data pipeline. They created a shell company called Horizon Health Analytics 3 days after my accident. It's been receiving massive data transfers from our primary servers, specifically patient information from clinical trials of my diagnostic AI." Emma looked over his shoulder at the complex rows of code and transfer logs. "Can you tell who's accessing it?" "Better than that." Lucas pulled up another screen. "I can see who's buying it. 3 major pharmaceutical companies and several health insurance providers. They're paying for predictive diagnostic models that would let them deny coverage to high-risk patients or jack up medication prices for vulnerable populations." Exactly what your AI was designed to prevent, Emma realized. The ultimate perversion of my work. Lucas's jaw clenched. "My AI was meant to make healthcare more accessible, not create another profit barrier." He continued searching, accessing financial records that confirmed Olivia's findings. Offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands showed regular deposits corresponding with data sale dates. Most damning of all, Lucas uncovered emails between Victor and Jenkins discussing the unfortunate accident and the need to maintain current management direction in the founder's extended absence. "We need to download everything," Emma urged. "Backup copies of all the evidence." Lucas nodded, initiating a secure transfer protocol. "This will take a few minutes." As the files downloaded, Emma's eye caught movement on the security camera feed displayed on a small monitor near the door. A failsafe she'd installed to warn of approaching visitors. "Someone's coming," she warned. Lucas quickly locked the tablet and slid it beneath his pillow, resuming his comatose position. Emma adjusted his IV and took up his chart just as the door opened. Dr. Harrison entered, accompanied by Patricia. His eyes narrowed when he saw Emma checking Lucas's vitals. "Nurse Reeves, you're not scheduled for another hour." Emma smiled professionally. "I came in early to prepare Mr. Montgomery for his additional therapies. Dr. Chen authorized an expanded physical therapy regimen." Dr. Harrison's lips thinned. "I don't recall approving this." "The orders were submitted yesterday," Emma replied, projecting calm despite her racing heart. "As Mr. Montgomery's neurological specialist, Dr. Chen has primary authority over his treatment plan. We'll see about that." Dr. Harrison checked Lucas's monitors with suspicious scrutiny. His brain activity seems elevated. "Response to the reduced sedation," Emma explained smoothly. Dr. Chen documented the expected changes in her notes. After a tense examination that seemed to stretch endlessly, Dr. Harrison and Patricia finally left. Emma released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "That was close," Lucas murmured, eyes still closed in case of monitoring. "Did the download complete?" Emma checked the tablet. "Yes, but there's a problem. The system logged your access. There's a security alert. Lucas's eyes snapped open. How recent? Just now. It says unauthorized executive access detected and shows your authentication pattern. Emma turned the tablet to show him the flashing notification. Damn it, Lucas muttered. They'll trace this. We have hours at most before they realize I'm awake. Late that night, Lucas experienced his most vivid flashback yet. Emma found him drenched in sweat, eyes wide with terror as he relived the accident. The water was so cold, he gasped as she held him. I couldn't get the door open. The car was sinking, and all I could think was that I'd never see my sister again, never finish what I started. Emma stroked his hair, heart aching at his vulnerability. But you survived. You're fighting back. Because of you. His eyes met hers with raw honesty. I hear your voice in my dreams, Emma. Even before I could respond, you were my tether to the world. The confession hung between them, deepening the connection neither had intended, but both now acknowledged. Emma's professional boundaries had crumbled in the face of their shared danger and growing bond. I need you to record everything, Lucas said later, after the nightmares had subsided. My testimony about what happened before the accident, what Victor and Jenkins said to me, everything I remember. Emma set up the tablet's camera. Lucas, now sitting upright in bed, looked directly into the lens. My name is Lucas Montgomery, founder and CEO of Montgomery Technologies. If you're seeing this, it means I've survived an attempt on my life orchestrated by Victor Mercer and Lawrence Jenkins. His voice grew stronger as he detailed the confrontation over the data sales, the threats they'd made, and his fragmented memories of the sabotaged vehicle. They betrayed everything my company stands for, he concluded, and they're still trying to kill me while dismantling my life's work. After finishing the recording, Lucas looked at Emma. We need to get this evidence to Olivia and law enforcement before Victor realizes the security breach. Once he knows I'm conscious and have accessed the servers, he'll move quickly. Emma nodded grimly, and we only have about 48 hours before Dr. Harrison forces that new medication into your treatment plan. Lucas took her hand, his expression resolute despite the fear beneath it. Then we have 2 days to expose a conspiracy and stop them from finishing what they started 3 months ago. The next morning, Emma arrived at work to find Dr. Chen waiting outside Lucas's room, her expression troubled. We need to talk, the neurologist said quietly, guiding Emma to a small consultation room nearby. Once inside with the door closed, Dr. Chen's professional composure faltered. Dr. Harrison confronted me about changing Lucas's medication protocol. He was furious. What did you tell him? Emma asked, anxiety mounting. That I was following best practices for patients showing subtle neurological improvements. Dr. Chen ran a hand through her hair, but he didn't buy it. He's ordered a complete reevaluation of Lucas's condition tomorrow morning, with a specialist who answers directly to the hospital board. Emma felt a chill. Someone connected to Victor Mercer? Almost certainly. Harrison mentioned the Montgomery Technologies donation several times during our conversation. Dr. Chen lowered her voice further. Emma, I pulled Harrison's personnel file. 3 years ago, he was nearly fired for falsifying research data. Shortly after, he received a grant from a foundation that I've now traced back to a shell company owned by Lawrence Jenkins. And, they're blackmailing him, Emma realized. Dr. Chen nodded. I believe he's an unwilling participant, but that doesn't make him less dangerous. He has too much to lose if he doesn't comply. After Dr. Chen left, Emma entered Lucas's room to find him sitting up in bed, looking stronger than he had since awakening. "We need to involve Marcus," Emma said after updating him on Dr. Chen's revelations. "He controls security access and monitoring systems." Lucas agreed, and during her break, Emma sought out the security guard in the hospital cafeteria. "I need your help," she said, without preamble. "It's about Lucas Montgomery. He's in danger." Marcus glanced around before replying. "I've suspected something wasn't right. The extra monitoring, the restricted visitor log. It's worse than you imagine." Emma explained the situation in careful, measured terms, watching Marcus's expression shift from skepticism to concern to determination. "I have access to the security office during night shifts," he told her. "I can loop the hallway cameras for 20 minutes at a time without raising flags. Would that help?" "More than you know," Emma replied gratefully. Back in Lucas's room, they strategized with renewed purpose. Lucas had regained enough strength to move independently for short periods, crucial for what they were planning. "The transfer order has been signed," Emma informed him after checking the updated charts. "Day after tomorrow, 10 a.m., they're moving you to Lakeside Recovery Center, which Victor controls through a board position," Lucas added grimly. "Once I'm there, I'll never leave." Their planning was interrupted when nurse manager Patricia entered without knocking. Her gaze swept the room, lingering suspiciously on Lucas's bed, where he had just managed to resume his comatose pose. "Dr. Harrison wants a blood sample," she announced, approaching with a collection kit. Emma interceded smoothly. "I'll handle that. I need to check his vitals anyway." Patricia didn't move. "I was specifically instructed to do it myself." Hospital protocol states that the assigned primary nurse conducts all direct patient care when on duty, Emma countered, standing her ground. Patricia's eyes narrowed. "You seem very protective of your patient, Nurse Reeves. One might question your professional boundaries." The implication hung in the air between them. Emma maintained her composure while internally calculating how much Patricia might know or suspect. "I'm protective of proper protocols and continuity of care," Emma replied evenly. "But if you insist, you can observe while I draw the blood." Patricia watched with hawk-like intensity as Emma performed the procedure. Before leaving, she paused at the door. "The board is very interested in Mr. Montgomery's case. So interested that they've requested security footage of his room for review." Her smile didn't reach her eyes, just to ensure quality of care, of course. After she left, Lucas abandoned his pretense. She knows something, or strongly suspects. Emma checked the security panel by the door, confirming that the in-room camera had been activated remotely. "We're being watched now." They maintained the charade while developing their contingency plans through whispered conversations during care procedures, when Emma could legitimately block the camera's view. That evening, Emma met with Olivia Montgomery in the hospital parking garage, quickly transferring the evidence they'd gathered. "Lucas recorded everything," Emma explained, handing over the encrypted files, his testimony, the server access logs, financial records, everything you need to take to the authorities. Olivia gripped Emma's arm. "What about Lucas?" "This won't matter if Victor succeeds in transferring him. We're handling that tomorrow night," Emma assured her. "Dr. Chen and Marcus are helping, but we need you to time the legal intervention perfectly." After finalizing their plans, Emma returned to the hospital for her night shift. As she approached Lucas's room, she heard raised voices inside. Dr. Harrison stood over Lucas's bed, face flushed with anger. "I know something's going on, Doctor," he was saying, apparently believing Lucas couldn't hear him. "These readings aren't consistent with a persistent vegetative state." Emma entered quickly. "Is everything all right, Doctor?" Dr. Harrison turned, struggling to regain his composure. "Nurse Reeves, I was just reviewing Mr. Montgomery's latest scans. There are anomalies I can't explain." Dr. Chen mentioned she'd be analyzing those tomorrow, Emma offered. "Dr. Chen has been removed from this case," Dr. Harrison replied coldly. "By order of the hospital administrator. I'll be personally overseeing Mr. Montgomery's transfer." After he left, Emma and Lucas exchanged alarmed glances. "They're moving faster than we anticipated," Lucas said. "We need to act tonight." Emma nodded, sending a text to Marcus. "Plan B, tonight." Their window of opportunity was closing rapidly, and the risks were escalating by the hour. But one thing had become crystal clear. If they didn't act now, Lucas Montgomery would disappear into Lakeside Recovery Center, his mind permanently damaged by the drugs Victor had ordered, his evidence buried, and his company stripped of everything he'd built. For Emma, what had begun as professional concern had transformed into something deeply personal. She wasn't just fighting to save a patient anymore. She was fighting for the man she'd come to care for, against all professional boundaries and better judgment. Night settled over Westbridge Hospital as Emma prepared for the most dangerous shift of her career. Her routine movements, checking medications, recording vitals, were performed with mechanical precision while her mind raced through their hastily revised plan. Dr. Chen had prepared transfer papers for Lucas to undergo a specialized neurological scan at midnight, a legitimate procedure that would give them 40 minutes of unquestioned movement through the hospital corridors. Marcus would loop the security cameras in sequence, creating a path of digital blindness through which they could move. At 11:30 p.m., Emma entered Lucas's room with a wheelchair. The in-room camera was still active, so she maintained the charade. "Time for your position change, Mr. Montgomery," she announced clearly, going through the motions of routine care. When she leaned close to adjust his pillows, she whispered, "Marcus is in position. Camera loops start in 3 minutes. Be ready." Lucas gave an imperceptible nod, his eyes remaining closed. Emma busied herself with equipment checks, counting down the seconds. At precisely 11:33, the small security monitor by the door showed a subtle flicker. Marcus's signal that the camera feed had been replaced with recorded footage. "Now," Emma urged, helping Lucas into a sitting position. His movements were still stiff, but vastly improved from the near paralysis of his early recovery. Together they managed to get him into the wheelchair, his hospital gown replaced by scrubs Emma had smuggled in. "The surgical mask and cap will hide your face," she explained, helping him don the disguise. "Everyone will see what they expect, a patient being transported for testing." Lucas gripped her hand briefly. "If this goes wrong—" "It won't," Emma interrupted, though her own heart hammered with anxiety. "Marcus has timed the camera loops perfectly. Dr. Chen is waiting at the service elevator." As she opened the door, Emma's professional mask slipped back into place. Confident nurse transporting a routine patient. They moved through the dimly lit corridor at a measured pace, passing the nurse's station where a single distracted attendant barely glanced up. The service elevator required a staff key card, which Emma swiped with steady hands despite her racing pulse. Once inside, Lucas exhaled sharply. "First hurdle cleared," he murmured through the surgical mask. "3 more to go," Emma reminded him, as they descended to the basement level where Dr. Chen waited. The doors opened to reveal the neurologist holding a tablet and looking anxiously at her watch. "You're 2 minutes behind schedule," she whispered. "We need to hurry. Marcus can only loop the loading dock cameras for 8 minutes without triggering automated security protocols." They navigated through storage areas and maintenance corridors, the wheels of the chair echoing in the institutional silence. Lucas's breathing grew labored with tension, his still recovering body struggling with the stress. "Almost there," Emma encouraged him, squeezing his shoulder gently. The loading dock door loomed ahead, its small window showing the darkness beyond. Dr. Chen swiped her access card, muttering a prayer under her breath. Nothing happened. She tried again. Still nothing. "They've deactivated my access," she realized, panic edging into her voice. Emma pulled out her own card. "Try mine." The light remained red, denying them exit. "Someone new," Lucas said grimly. They anticipated this. A voice from behind confirmed their worst fears. "Indeed, we did, Mr. Montgomery." They turned to find nurse manager Patricia standing in the corridor, flanked by 2 security guards who weren't Marcus. Her thin smile conveyed triumph. "Did you really think we wouldn't notice Dr. Chen's unusual midnight transfer request?" Patricia asked. "Or your security guard friend's clumsy attempt to loop our cameras?" Emma stepped protectively in front of Lucas's wheelchair. "Patricia, you don't understand what's happening. Victor Mercer tried to kill Lucas and is now trying to permanently damage his brain. We have evidence." "Save it," Patricia interrupted. Mr. Mercer explained everything. How Mr. Montgomery's tragic condition has led his nurse to develop inappropriate attachments and delusions. How Dr. Chen was manipulated into participating in this unfortunate escape attempt. She gestured to the guards. "Take Mr. Montgomery back to his room. Dr. Harrison is waiting to administer the new medication protocol immediately." Lucas tensed, preparing to stand and fight despite his weakened state. Emma subtly pressed her hand against his shoulder, warning him to wait. "Nurse Reeves and Dr. Chen will be escorted to the administrator's office," Patricia continued. "Your employment termination paperwork is already prepared." The moment stretched taut as Emma assessed their options, each one worse than the last. Then, miraculously, the loading dock door slid open behind them. Marcus stood in the doorway, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. "Go," he shouted, holding the door. "Security office is taken care of, but not for long." Patricia lunged forward as Emma spun Lucas's wheelchair toward the exit. One of the security guards moved to intercept them, but Dr. Chen surprised everyone by jamming her tablet into his midsection, buying precious seconds. Emma pushed the wheelchair through the door as chaos erupted behind them. Outside, the cool night air hit her face as she spotted the waiting car, Olivia Montgomery behind the wheel, engine running. "Hurry," Olivia called, jumping out to help transfer her brother from the wheelchair to the back seat. Patricia and the guards burst through the door just as Emma climbed into the passenger seat. Olivia floored the accelerator, tires squealing as they fled the hospital grounds. Lucas lay across the back seat, breathing heavily from exertion. "Marcus and Dr. Chen," he gasped. "They'll face charges." "They knew the risks," Emma said, though guilt churned in her stomach. "And Olivia has plans for them too, right?" Olivia nodded grimly, eyes fixed on the road as she navigated the dark streets. "My legal team is already on standby, but we need to get Lucas somewhere safe first. Victor will have every hospital and hotel in the city watched by morning." "Where are we going?" Emma asked. "The last place they'd look," Olivia replied. "My ex-husband's cabin in the mountains. It's remote, secure, and not connected to either of us on paper." As the city lights faded behind them, Emma turned to check on Lucas. Despite everything, his eyes held steady determination rather than fear. "We have 12 hours, he said. 12 hours before Victor realizes his security alert wasn't a glitch, before he understands I've accessed the servers and have everything we need to destroy him. 12 hours, Emma repeated, reaching back to take his hand, to prepare for the fight of our lives. The cabin appeared through the pre-dawn mist like something from another world, rustic wooden beams and large windows overlooking an expanse of pine forest. Inside, Olivia quickly set up a makeshift medical station in the main bedroom, using supplies she'd gathered over the past week in anticipation of potentially needing to hide her brother. "I've been preparing since our meeting in the park," she explained to Emma, who was helping Lucas settle onto the bed. "After what you told me, I knew we might need a contingency plan." Emma checked Lucas's vital signs, concerned by his pallor after the stressful escape. "His pulse is elevated, but that's to be expected. The most important thing is rest and continued physical therapy." Olivia nodded, setting up a secure laptop on the kitchen table. "Rest isn't a luxury we have much of. Victor will realize what's happened by morning rounds, if not sooner." Lucas insisted on joining them at the table despite Emma's protests. "My sister's right. We need to execute the final phase of our plan immediately." For the next several hours, they worked methodically. Olivia established secure connections with her legal team and trusted contacts in law enforcement. Lucas organized the evidence they'd gathered into a comprehensive case against Victor and Jenkins. Emma monitored Lucas's condition while helping compile the medical documentation, proving the unauthorized experimental drugs and falsified records. The transfer to Lakeside was the final piece, Lucas explained, showing Emma a document he'd discovered in the company's servers. Victor purchased controlling interest in the facility through an offshore shell company 3 weeks after my accident. The same day, he authorized research funding for cognitive suppression therapies through Montgomery Technologies' medical division. Olivia's phone rang just after sunrise. Her expression darkened as she listened to the caller. "They've issued warrants for both of you," she reported after hanging up. "Dr. Chen and Marcus have been arrested for allegedly conspiring to kidnap Lucas Montgomery from medical care. Victor is giving press conferences claiming his CEO has been abducted by a delusional nurse who developed romantic feelings for her comatose patient." Emma felt her face flush with anger and embarrassment. "He's trying to discredit us before we can expose him. Tanti can't." "Standard damage control tactics," Olivia agreed, her lawyer's mind analyzing the strategy. "If he can establish you as emotionally unstable and me as a resentful sister trying to seize company control, anything we present will be viewed through that lens." "Then we need to change the narrative," Lucas said, determination hardening his voice. "We can't just release the evidence package to authorities. We need to go public first." Olivia looked skeptical. "The evidence will hold up in court, but public opinion is fickle. Victor has the company's PR machine behind him." "But he doesn't have the founder's face," Lucas countered. "I'm supposedly a vegetable being transferred to long-term care. What happens when I appear on camera, fully conscious and demonstrating awareness of everything he's done?" They worked quickly to prepare, setting up camera equipment Olivia had brought. Lucas changed into a suit she'd packed, the formal attire hanging loosely on his still recovering frame but restoring some of the authority he'd possessed before the accident. As Emma helped him prepare, adjusting his tie and sleeve cuffs, she found herself struck by the transformation. Despite everything, there was something magnificent about his resilience, his unwavering focus in the face of betrayal and violence. "What?" Lucas asked, noticing her expression. "I was just thinking about the first time I saw you," Emma replied softly. "Unconscious, vulnerable, and now look at you, about to take back everything they tried to steal." His hand caught hers, bringing it to his lips, in a gesture that sent warmth coursing through her despite the danger surrounding them. "Because of you," he said simply. "You gave me a chance when everyone else had written me off." The moment was interrupted by Olivia's return. "It's time. Our contact at Global News Network is standing by for the live feed." They gathered in the cabin's living room, positioning Lucas where natural light would clearly illuminate his face. Emma stood just off camera, ready to assist if his strength faltered during the broadcast. Olivia made the final connection, nodding to her brother when the feed went live. "My name is Lucas Montgomery," he began, his voice steady despite the ordeal of the past days. 3 months ago, I was nearly killed in what was reported as a tragic accident. That was a lie. My car was sabotaged by Victor Mercer and Lawrence Jenkins after I discovered they were secretly selling patient data harvested from Montgomery Technologies' medical AI research. He continued, methodically presenting evidence, explaining the conspiracy to keep him sedated and transfer him to a facility where his brain would be permanently damaged. He praised the courage of Emma, Dr. Chen, and Marcus, who had risked everything to save his life and reveal the truth. As he spoke, Olivia monitored reactions on her phone. "It's working," she whispered to Emma. "Major news outlets are picking it up. Social media is exploding." Before Lucas could finish his statement, the cabin's security system chimed a warning. Olivia checked the perimeter cameras she'd installed. "We have company," she said tensely. "2 SUVs coming up the access road." Emma peered at the screen, her blood turning cold as she recognized one of the figures emerging from the vehicles. "It's Victor," she whispered, "and he's armed." Lucas continued his broadcast without hesitation, his voice betraying none of the danger closing in around them. "I'm releasing all evidence to law enforcement and media outlets simultaneously. Victor Mercer and Lawrence Jenkins attempted to murder me once. Now they're trying to silence me permanently through medical means. I will not be silenced." As he finished, the sound of breaking glass came from the back of the cabin. Olivia grabbed her gun from a drawer, while Emma helped Lucas from his chair. "The broadcast is done," Olivia said urgently. "We need to get out now. There's a hidden trail behind the property." They moved toward the back door just as heavy footsteps entered the cabin from multiple directions. Victor's voice called out, cold and controlled, despite the circumstances. "Lucas, I know you're here. This doesn't need to end badly. We can still fix this." Lucas stopped, turning toward the voice of the man who had tried to kill him. Emma tugged his arm desperately. "Lucas, please, we need to go." His eyes met hers, something resolute and terrible in their blue depths. "I'm done running from him." Before either woman could stop him, Lucas Montgomery stepped into the main room to face his would-be murderer. Victor Mercer's composed facade cracked visibly when he saw Lucas standing before him. For a split second, genuine shock registered on his face before his features hardened into cold calculation. "Lucas," he said, as if greeting a colleague at a board meeting rather than a man he tried to kill. "You're looking remarkably well for someone supposedly in a vegetative state." "Oh." Lucas stood tall despite his weakened condition, drawing strength from months of rage and determination. "It's over, Victor." The broadcast went live to every major news outlet. The evidence is already in the hands of federal authorities. Victor's smile was razor thin. "Unfortunate that you'll suffer a setback in your recovery. Trauma patients often experience confusion, paranoia, false memories. Your medical records will confirm it." "Those can be falsified," Lucas acknowledged. "But the financial trails can't. The data sales, the offshore accounts, the purchase of lakeside recovery through shell companies specifically to house me. Behind Victor, Jenkins entered with two men who looked more like mercenaries than hospital security. Emma watched in horror as Victor casually removed a gun from his jacket. "I admired you once," Victor said, his tone almost regretful. "Your vision, your innovation. But you were wasting the company's potential, focusing on accessibility over profit. Do you know how much healthcare data is worth on the private market?" "I know exactly what it's worth," Lucas replied, "and what it would cost the patients who trusted us with their information." Victor raised the gun. "Always so principled. That's why you're standing here with a gun pointed at you, while I'm still the one with all the power. Are you?" Olivia emerged from the shadows, her own weapon trained on Victor. "Because from where I'm standing, you're surrounded by federal agents with a live broadcast still running from this cabin." Uncertainty flickered across Victor's face. "She's bluffing," Jenkins insisted. "We monitored all communications. There are no agents." The cabin erupted into chaos as windows shattered and black-clad figures swarmed in from multiple entry points, shouting, "Federal agents, drop your weapons." Emma moved instinctively toward Lucas as Victor's arm swung wildly, his gun discharging in the confusion. She felt a burning sensation across her upper arm as she collided with Lucas, both of them crashing to the floor as agents tackled Victor and Jenkins. In the aftermath, a strange calm descended. Emma became aware of Lucas cradling her, his face white with concern as he pressed his hand against her bleeding arm. "It's just a graze," she assured him, though the pain suggested otherwise. "Don't minimize your injuries, Gal," he scolded gently. "I've had enough of people hiding medical truths from me." An agent who identified herself as the operation leader approached them once the scene was secured. "Mr. Montgomery, Mississippi Montgomery, we received your evidence package. The broadcast gave us probable cause to move immediately." Olivia holstered her weapon with a relieved sigh. "About time. I've been feeding your office information for weeks." "We needed irrefutable proof of conspiracy," the agent explained. "Mr. Montgomery's living testimony provided that final piece." Emergency medical technicians arrived to treat Emma's wound, which was indeed a graze, but deep enough to require stitches. As they worked, Lucas refused to leave her side. Their roles reversed, as he now became her caretaker. "You took a bullet for me," he said quietly, while the cabin bustled with law enforcement activity. Emma managed to smile through the pain. "Just returning the favor. You trusted me when you couldn't speak." Weeks later, Emma stood in the doorway of Lucas's hospital room, a different hospital, where he'd been properly treated for his remaining injuries and rehabilitation needs. The room was filled with flowers and technology, evidence of his gradual return to both health and his position at Montgomery Technologies. "The board meeting went well?" she asked, noting his satisfied expression as he set aside his tablet. "Very well. Jenkins and Victor are facing multiple federal charges. The interim leadership team has recommitted to the original vision for the medical AI project." He smiled at her. "How was your meeting with the nursing board?" Emma entered, sitting on the edge of his bed. "Better than expected, given the extraordinary circumstances and the evidence of medical malpractice at Westbridge. They've dismissed all ethics complaints against me. Dr. Chen has been fully reinstated as well. And Marcus, starting next week as head of security for Montgomery Technologies, per your sister's recommendation." Lucas took her hand, his thumb tracing the outline of the bandage still covering her healing wound. "And what about you, Emma Reeves?" What does your future hold? That depends, she replied, meeting his gaze steadily. My former patient has made quite an impression on me, but I've been told relationships that begin in intense circumstances rarely survive normal life. I think we're well past worrying about conventional wisdom. Lucas intertwined his fingers with hers. Besides, I'm not your patient anymore. 6 months later, the Montgomery Technologies headquarters buzzed with activity as employees gathered for the announcement of a new initiative. Emma, now director of the company's patient advocacy program, stood beside Lucas as he unveiled the Emma Reeves Foundation for Medical Ethics. Healthcare should never be about profit over people, Lucas told the assembled crowd and media. This foundation will ensure patient rights remain at the forefront of medical technology development. The press conference complete, they walked together through the offices Lucas had reclaimed. His strength fully returned, his company rebuilding under ethical leadership. Are you happy with your new role? Lucas asked as they entered his private office overlooking the city. It's quite a change from bedside nursing. Emma smiled, thinking of the patients whose lives would improve through her program. I'm still caring for people, just on a larger scale now. And what about caring for just one person in particular? Lucas asked, pulling a small box from his desk drawer, because that person would very much like to make a formal request for lifelong care. He opened the box to reveal a simple but elegant ring. Emma's breath caught as he continued. You gave me back my life when everything had been taken from me, Lucas said softly. I want to spend it with you, if you'll have me. Emma took his face in her hands, remembering those first days when she'd spoken to him without knowing if he could hear her. The nights of secret recovery, the danger they'd faced together. The journey from nurse and patient to equals had been unconventional, but then, so was everything about their story. Yes, she whispered against his lips. Some patient-nurse relationships are worth breaking all the rules for. As Lucas slipped the ring onto her finger, Emma reflected that